Our guest today is a senior solutions architect at AWS. She walks us through how she was able to successfully transition from a research career focused on brains and behaviors to a successful career in the cloud industry. She shares great advice for how to prepare for interviews and what it takes to be the best of the best in the industry. I am really excited to share this conversation with you. Welcome to the Cloud Career Mentor. I am your host, Fayomi. And on this show, we aim to inspire, educate, and motivate you to make the right moves to break into the cloud industry. If you're looking to get your first job in the cloud industry, I have just the thing for you. It's a free guide that walks you through the 3 simple steps you need to take to get you as prepared as possible to break into the cloud industry. By completing these 3 steps, you will become a more attractive candidate to potential employers. The link for that is in the show description. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Career Mentor Show. We have a very special guest today. She's a very talented senior solutions architect who's worked in a variety of high-level companies, including at Oracle and at Amazon itself in the AWS organization. She's also very active in the AWS community by hosting talks on AWS's Twitch and other channels. I'm really excited that she's joined us here today to share her journey of how she got into the cloud. Welcome to the show, Skye Hart.
What an intro. Thank you so much for having me, and nice to meet all of you watching.
Awesome. No, I think, it's a well-deserved intro. The first question I have for you is, what do you do in your current role at the moment? What are your main roles and responsibilities?
Sure, yeah. So I am a senior solutions architect at AWS, and I kind of have the coolest job in the world because I work with startups every day. So every single day I get to go in and meet startups and advise them on their tech stack and help them build kind of the future that is next. I'm also a huge data nerd, and I'm a member of our analytics technical field community. So that's why I do all the fun stuff like Twitch and talks and all that sort of thing too.
No, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot going on, from, helping startups to doing the sort of community side of things. That's excellent. So now that we know that, I want us to go back to the very beginning. Maybe what were you doing before you got into technology and the cloud industry in general?
Yeah, I'll have to go back to university. I'm from New York. I live in Colorado now. But in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do, probably like a lot of people. So I kind of fell in love with quantum physics and psychology and philosophy and poetry. And I was like, how am I going to ever apply this to anything? I fell into cloud in a super weird way. I wasn't studying computer science. I was actually studying cognitive psychology. And I learned neural nets before neural networks were cool, before the AI boom and anything was relevant. And I started studying kind of how the human brain worked and human behavior and doing mathematical models of the human brain. And I fell into cloud before I knew what cloud was. Obviously, you don't grow up and you're like, I really want to be, every little girl's like, I want to be a solutions architect. I did not know what that was. I did not know what the cloud was. So I actually fell in it through being mathematically trained because I realized I like statistics and no one else in my classes liked stats. So I thought something was wrong with me. So kind of leaned into that. So not a traditional path by any means, but I did understand math and probability and stats, and that was how I fell into it.
And that sort of explains why you're in the sort of data science side of things. I mean, for me, I was very bad at maths. Like, I actually studied geography at university, so nothing to do with technology in the cloud at all. So yeah, there's multiple paths to this. I saw on your LinkedIn that you were a research assistant with a focus on cognition, or at the Cognition, Brain and Behavior Lab. What were you doing? What were you studying?
I actually started in social psychology and personality and things. And then I liked more of the mathematical stuff. So then I switched to cognition. And then I was studying, we were doing trials. So I really ran people through, I ran mice experiments, I ran people experiments, and I was trying to understand people's and individuals' propensities for risk and behavior. Why did they make the certain decisions they made? So I learned how to program in R and Python, and had a really great professor who kind of showed me the ropes, but I was doing lab work.
Nice. So how do you go from, doing lab work, working in research to transitioning into a more technical role and less of a research role?
Yeah, I got into the cloud in a career fair, which sounds silly, but all of those watching right now, I would not, the in-person interaction, we don't have enough. And so I recommend checking out local career fairs and things. I ended up talking to someone in line for like an hour who turned out to be the recruiter. So after I thought he was a fellow student, I realized that everything is a job interview. And so everyone you talk to is probably interviewing you in some way, and ended up pulling me into this place called Oracle. And I think out of 37 people in my incoming class, I was the only one who was not a computer science major. So
Wow, that's really special because, yeah, you are so good that they thought it doesn't matter if she's not from a computer science background. Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, I'm very glad that person took a chance on me because it definitely it got me in there. So
Yes, and for those who don't know, Oracle is one of the biggest technology companies in the world. So yeah, it's a really huge company. And so when you go in, were you doing what kind of things were you doing at that point? Because I'm guessing AWS, because Oracle has its own cloud. So were you doing more Oracle stuff or more AWS stuff, or what was going on?
yeah, that's a good question. So there are a lot of commonalities, but ultimately a lot of differences between all the major cloud providers. So I think that you're getting into it and like strategies I used in studying, because I actually at one point I've interviewed with Oracle, Google, and Amazon. All to completion. So I'm pretty familiar with all the cloud providers and their offerings and things like that. And my advice is you have to lock yourself in a room. And I mean that in like a really literal sense. Like when I was studying and for those interviews, all three of them, I locked myself away for like 10 hours a day and I researched. And it sounds really ridiculous, but my friends didn't see me for weeks and weeks and weeks because all I was doing was learning the tech. And there are similarities in the sense that, like, there are databases, there are database services, there's computer offerings, there's going to be all these things, but the services are ultimately very different. So you have to understand kind of what is a bucket mean on Amazon versus Oracle, what is the database, the terms, everything like that, and get into the weeds a little bit.
Yes, no, I think that's such good advice because I think a lot of people when they interview, they almost kind of wing it because we kind of feel, yeah, I kind of know the content. And then they ask a simple question like, tell me about a project you've done. And then your mind blanks. So I really like the idea of preparing. That's the best way to be successful. What other things did you do to prepare for your interviews or even just in terms of learning, once you were in that environment? Because I imagine it was quite new and quite different from what you were coming from. How did you upskill yourself?
Yeah. I think the first is ask yourself what type of learner you are, because a lot of people are different. Like I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to be hands-on in the technology. I need to be I went through the free trials. I needed to touch the services. I needed to build. But other people might be auditory. You might want to listen to some podcasts or things like that, or you're a visual learner and you need to be downloading slide decks and things like that. So ask yourself what type of learner you are. And then from the intro in, I did a ton of research on what those interviews are like, behavioral questions. What are they going to ask me? How do I best prepare? What are some of the key concepts and services I needed to know? And then once in, I never stopped learning. I learned stuff every single day, just being on the job. So yes, there are certifications, there's training paths, there's all these things. There's my Twitch series that I'm going to shamelessly plug in, but you learn a lot just being on the job and being with my customers. I learn more. It's like being thrown in the deep end. Every day is different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what I usually advise people is that you learn by doing primarily. Because I'm the kind of person I love reading as a hobby, like I read all the time. But when it comes to technology, I learn best by watching videos and doing hands-on because I need to see what's going on. And if I open a book, I just sort of fall asleep. So I think it's really important to get your hands dirty and start creating projects. And what you said as well about actually doing it in a job, like I tell people, your number one goal is to get a job, because once you're actually in a role, like you realize that no matter what you've done before, that's still just the bare minimum, because working comes with its own pressures. You know, you're dealing with different stakeholders, different internal systems, and you realize that, you know, something that seems really easy on a certification, by the time you apply it to a real world scenario, there's so many other variables that come into play. So I think that's quite an important point as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, that's great. So, you know, you've talked about how you've sort of prepared for interviews, how you've upskilled yourself. What are some differences you've noticed between the tasks you are doing, maybe as a more junior engineer, you know, to mid-level to senior? Maybe you can walk people through the transitions in terms of tasks, expectations, roles and responsibilities, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have switched roles, and I have been entry level, junior, and then senior in both essays and cloud engineering. So I think that the entry level, there's different bars and there's different levels in every single cloud provider. So and the way we do it at Amazon is it's like L4, L5, L6, and that's kind of how you progress. And when you're just starting off, there is an expectation that you're going to need a lot of help from your peers. You're going to need a lot of help, a lot of support, a lot of training, a lot of enablement. We have boot camps called Tech U. So if you're starting off, check out those boot camps, because that's how I got my start. And I think that it's a really good incubator if you don't know cloud, that'll teach you cloud within 6 months. So those are really great programs to start off right out of university. And then after you get into this mid-level, you might take on some more projects. You might start to kind of have more ownership over those projects. And then this recent shift, because I just switched to senior, I think I got to a point where I stopped building my own body of work and I started caring about other people's body of works. So giving other people the opportunities, finding out what motivates them, putting them into the spotlight, scaling my own initiatives through others, and giving them the opportunity. And it's kind of like this external thing. And instead of focusing on me, I'm like, how can I bring other people up? Because I'm quite happy with where I'm at now.
Yeah, I think that's such a point that I want to sort of stay on, because it's kind of like when you're first coming up, your priority is to get your skills ready, is to be as good as possible. But as you sort of grow in your career, you realize you can actually have more impact by helping others in the team to scale up as well, because now you can do bigger projects, you can bring people on that journey, you can help others get achieve the similar results to you because you've been on that journey. And so, you know, you can see things that they can't. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because not a lot of people talk about that. What would you say is the biggest difference between a cloud engineer and a solutions architect?
That's a good question. So the cloud engineer fundamentally is focused on kind of the entire sales cycle. So that goes through the progression of discovery, through proof of concepts, through joint execution plans, to even sometimes implementation. You do longer projects, more building, more focusing on like demos, workshops, that sort of thing. The solutions architect is more a trusted advisor, is what they call it. So it is much more, you're an advisor to the customer. You're not selling anything. You're not part of the sales cycle. And you focus on the well architected principles, we call them. It's a really good thing. You should check it out. It's like yeah, it's everything to my role. But looking at the well architected principles, understanding the focus of the customer, working backwards, they're more, I think, that they lead the engagements. And then I pull in engineers and specialists as I need to, but SA kind of sees the holistic business side and the tech side, that left brain, right brain kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's good to get that sort of differentiation. I'm guessing that's mostly an Amazon thing as well, because depending on what company you work for, solutions architect might mean something different. So, for example, I've worked at places where, as a solutions architect, you're more designing architecture, but also communicating with the clients, and almost like a consultative role, so like what you said. And in some places the distinction is a bit more murky, where even though you're a solutions architect, you're still building things, and you're still so it's an interesting thing with the cloud industry, because there's a lot of roles like cloud engineer, DevOps, and they all sort of like mix into each other a bit. But I think there's definitely a delineation between, say, a solutions architect and a cloud engineer. So yeah, no, I think that's really valid. So you've done really well for yourself. You've put in a lot of work. You've achieved something that a lot of people strive for. What are some actions or attributes would you say have helped you to progress in your cloud career?
Well, first of all, thank you because it's so humbling. I don't see myself like that, which is funny. But two things. One is I have this like inherent passion, drive, grit. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, to do the best I possibly can. And I focus and I pay attention to like this thing called the book of work, but that's everything I do. That's paying attention to the metrics. What does my organization care about? How do I move the ball? What is our strategy? Like, what are the extra projects I do? Like the book of work, your body of work is so important. That's one. I don't know why I just have this passion drive for that. And the two is the people. And I say people because I credit pretty much every position I've ever gotten, every new opportunity, every new role, every new team is because someone believed in me and said, hey, Scott, you might be a really good fit for this. And so I am really, really grateful for all of those individuals who have helped me and shown me that I can do it, because sometimes I suffer with imposter syndrome and I can't believe I'm at where I am today. So
I think those are two valid points. With your first point, thinking of the book of work or the body of work, I think that's so important, because I'm not sure what it is, but there's this concept floating around that what's the bare minimum I can do to break into the cloud industry? And I kind of see it as you should almost look at it as, I really enjoy playing with technology. I want to learn programming. I want to learn how things work. And then that's what helps you to break into the industry, because it's not easy. A lot of people want these jobs. And I think the more you can do to stand out by improving your body of work, by learning new things, the more fun you're going to have. I remember even after I got my first job, even though I was focused on DevOps and cloud, I was still making web applications in Django, just because I thought, it'd be interesting to know how to create an app and host it and do interesting things. And that's how you learn, by just doing things, especially your own projects, as opposed to just following one tutorial after the other. And in terms of your second point about people pulling you up, I think that's so important. But I also think that a lot of people are really good at recognizing talent. A lot of people are really good at saying, wow, she's really putting in the work. And it makes it easier for them to bring you up, because they know that, okay, if they bring you in, you'll deliver. Whereas there's some people, I'm sure we all know, it's like, you think, if I give this person a chance, it's probably not going to amount to much, because people want to help, but they want to help the people who are already helping themselves. And I think, yeah, that's really important. Like, not only do the work, but also make yourself the kind of person that people want to help. And so I think, yeah, you definitely exhibited those things that make people want to help you.
and your first point, I liked your first point too, back at that, is if you were anything like me, just apply. Don't be afraid to apply. Because I know that there's people listening who are sitting out there with an amazing resume, who are just, trying to get all of the certifications, trying to do it all. If you are like me at all, you will just sit there and think, I'm not worth enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to get this role. But I think that the first and the scariest leap is to apply. And keep applying and find that position that's a good fit and you like the team and it's a good fit for you. And that's the first leap was the scariest for me. So, yeah.
Yes, no, I think that's great advice. Like, I heard this amazing quote, and it says, don't reject yourself. Because a lot of people self-reject. It's like, no, apply, let the other company reject you, because you never know. You might be just the person they're looking for. So don't reject yourself. Put in the work, get your CV or resume looking good. And yeah, just send it out there. So that's great. Only a couple more questions to go. What's one positive and one negative thing about working in the cloud, would you say?
Oh, the positives just keep coming. I love this job. I honestly, yeah, that's so hard. Well, actually, one overarching one. I get to be 100% myself for the first time ever. And that's because I work with an amazing team. I get to challenge myself every day. I get to learn with every single day. I work with startups. There's some of the things they're doing. I like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen that before, you know? So a lot of cool stuff, a lot of innovation. I consider myself kind of a futurist, which just basically means I'm always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And so in your careers, I guess talking to all this, the Imagine people out there is if you're interested in any career, whether it's cloud or something else, it's like ask yourself, what's that going to mean for the future in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then go do it. So that's positive. There's too many positives. I can't pick one. I really, really love working in the cloud. That's harder for me. I'd say a lot of it is my internal self doubt, to be totally, have humility here. But I have horrible imposter syndrome all the time. And I remember like coming into this role and I met a bunch of Amazonians and I was sitting there like, wow, these are the smartest people I've ever met. I'm like, why'd they pick me? So there is always an element of, I'm shaking hands with the CTO of a unicorn company. I am meeting people who, built different applications in their careers that are really well known. I'm in these rooms that I am learning so much from these individuals. So I had to kind of look into myself and like, I can add value. There is diversity of thought. I do bring new experiences to the table. There's a reason. And like my whole mantra of, you're exactly where you need to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. And, we all feel that, we all feel, am I good enough? I think for me, it's always worse when projects aren't going as well as they could do because, sometimes it happens, deadlines are running late or you can't, you're spending 5 hours troubleshooting something that you thought, oh, I'd do this in 5 minutes. And yeah, I think it's really good to share that because, for anyone feeling that, we all do. And it's a matter of just accepting that you feel it, but yeah, I guess still acting anyways and still bringing your best self forward. So really, thank you for sharing that. What advice do you have for someone looking to get their first cloud role?
I'm going to go back to the best way to predict the future is to build it. But I said this to my interns this summer. Build is, it could mean a lot of different things. Build could mean just building your body of work, your book of experiences, having internships, having previous roles, that all comes into play. Building your network, so reaching out to people at Amazon and asking about their experience and getting to know them and seeing what those jobs, what those roles are like. What does an SA do? What does an SDE do? Ask those questions. And just building, like getting your stories ready. The projects you did, the successes you had, the failures you've had, all of those will come into play into those interviews. They'll ask you about every single failure you had and why. It is a beautiful process, but they're looking at kind of the way you think and the way you troubleshoot and the way you overcome obstacles. So, yeah.
Yes, I think that's such great advice, Skye. You've shared some amazing insights for our listeners. I think this is going to be a really helpful episode. Is there anything you're working on that you'd like to tell the people about, or if people want to get in touch, where would you like to point our listeners?
Yeah, you can go. Well, you can add me on LinkedIn. It's just Skye Hart, kind of a funny name. My mom was a hippie. And also, I'm doing this Let's Ship It show. So I have two. One's called Data Analytics, and the other is called Modernization. So actually, I had someone reach out to me and said it really helped him pass the Data Analytics specialty exam. So it's just, I've never Twitched before too. So it's like watching me live stream for the first time, and it was an experience. But I do have those series, so check out Let's Ship It on AWS Twitch. Yeah.
And is this something you're doing regularly, the Twitch streaming?
Yeah. So we're just doing, this is our second series, and they're like 6
Wow.
episodes a piece. And so I really just break down, the first one's data. So I just break down the concepts. What's a data lake? How to choose a database, how to build a data pipeline, how to, have a proper architecture. And then the second one's modernization. So it's all about migrations. How do you modernize? How do you break up your containers, and your monoliths and things like that. So those are both of the series. So
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put all the links in the show notes as well, so you can check down there to get those links. Thanks for coming on, Sky, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.